But first, U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping Liberation Day tariffs were given a lifeline today after an appeals court paused the lower court's ruling, which initially blocked his tariff policy against all of its trade partners. Yesterday, the Court of International Trade in New York said the president's authority to justify tariffs on Canada and more than 50 other nations didn't meet a threshold under U.S. economic law. Jason Gaidola is back with us in studio tonight and has the latest. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Manisa. The U.S. Appeals Court didn't provide a reason for the reinstatement, but ordered that the plaintiffs have a week to respond, and the White House has until June 9th to do so as well.
The courts should have no role here. There is a troubling and dangerous trend of unelected judges inserting themselves into the presidential decision-making process. America cannot function if President Trump, or any other president for that matter, has their sensitive diplomatic or trade negotiations railroaded by activist judges.
Earlier today, the White House's press secretary ranted about the blocking of U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping Liberation Day tariffs and demanded the Supreme Court must rule in Trump's favor when the case reaches the High Court.
We will comply with the court orders, but yes, the president has other legal authorities where he can implement tariffs. However, it does not dispute the fact that the president was right to declare a national emergency when it came to fentanyl and when it came to our crippling deficits and the lack of critical supply chains here at home. That is the reasoning for the president's tariffs, and the court didn't dispute those facts, by the way.
However, later this afternoon, Trump's economic agenda was given new life after a federal appeals court ordered a pause, which restores the U.S. president's ability to impose his worldwide levies. Appeal judges did not give a reason for the reinstatement, but ordered both sides to provide their arguments by early next month.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day, waiting for a long time.
Back in April, U.S. President Trump unveiled his list of global baseline tariffs on most imports and harsher duties on some of its larger trading partners. Yesterday, the U.S. Court of International Trade in New York ruled against the White House and blocked the president's executive orders, adding it didn't meet the threshold under a U.S. law of economic emergency. After Trump unleashed the sweeping tariffs, lawsuits called it an overreach of authority, and judges ruled that the liberation levies should be approved through Congress. On Parliament Hill this afternoon, Canadian federal officials say they're not changing course.
I know we're going to fight for Canadian industry, Canadian workers. That has been always our modus operandi. We always say we're going to fight these tariffs. They're unjustified. They're hurting our businesses, our workers. We're going to say we're going to protect our workers in our industry.
The government welcomes yesterday's decision by the U.S. Court of International Trade, which is consistent with Canada's long-standing position that the U.S. IEEPA tariffs were unlawful as well as unjustified.
Prior to the appeals decision, Prime Minister Mark Carney opened session inside the House of Commons by addressing the roadblock to Trump's sweeping tariffs.
It therefore remains the top priority of Canada's new government to establish a new economic and security relationship with the United States and to strengthen our collaboration with reliable trading partners and allies around the world.
But under a different U.S. law, unchallenged tariffs on steel, aluminum, and the auto sector remain in place against Canada. Carney also says other sectors are still under threat, including lumber, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals.
So it could take a long time. I mean, if it does, courts move pretty slowly. So perhaps whilst there's a lull and no tariffs, perhaps some deals can be done globally, and we can get a bit of relief and have people see the folly of their ways.
Numerous economists believe that Trump could seek to reimpose many of his levies under a range of other laws that authorize tariffs. The White House confirms trade talks will resume in the meantime.
Other countries should also know, and they do know, that the president reserves other tariff authorities, Section 232, for example, to ensure that America's interests are being restored around the world. But I can confirm that our ambassador for trade, Jamieson Greer, already heard from countries around the world this morning who said they intend to continue with these negotiations.
U.S. President Trump's top trade advisor, Peter Navarro, told reporters today that the White House is looking at all strategic options to still impose its intended tariffs, even if they lose in court.